Jack Harper stared at the screen in disbelief. The words glowed in front of him, written in the flowing script of the Galaxy Council's universal language. Jack wasn't supposed to have access to these transmissions. As a junior diplomat at Earth's newly established Galactic Embassy, his clearance level was minimal. But a glitch in the communication system had sent this message to his terminal instead of to the senior staff. The message was clear. Humanity was under evaluation, and they were failing. Jack read the words again, his heart beating faster. The Galaxy Council, a gathering of the oldest and most advanced species in the known universe, had been watching Earth for centuries. They had seen the wars, the environmental damage, the political chaos, and now, just 3 years after officially welcoming humans into the galactic community, they had reached a decision. Humanity was an evolutionary mistake. Jack felt sick. According to the transmission, the Council would vote in 30 Earth days on correction measures. He didn't need a translator to understand what that meant. At best, Earth would be cut off from all galactic contact. At worst, Jack didn't want to think about the worst. The embassy was quiet this late in the artificial night cycle. Jack's small office was tucked away in a corner of the human section, far from the important areas where the real diplomacy happened. Through his single window, he could see the swirling colors of the galactic hub, a massive space station where representatives from over 500 worlds lived and worked together. This can't be happening, Jack whispered to himself. He had been so proud when he was selected for this position. At 28, he was one of the youngest humans ever sent to represent Earth in the stars. His family back in Ohio had thrown him a big party. His mother had cried. Now he might be one of the last humans to ever set foot in this place. Jack looked again at the message, focusing on the details. The final assessment would be presented by Council Elder Zixtar, a being made of living crystal from the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. The vote would take place in the High Chamber. The decision would be binding, unless it was challenged. Jack quickly searched through the embassy database. There had to be a way to fight this. Humans had barely begun to understand galactic politics, but every system had rules. Every judgment had a process for appeal. After 2 hours of searching, his eyes burning from staring at the screen, Jack found something. An ancient provision in the Council Charter, almost forgotten. Any species facing judgment could request a formal challenge to prove their worth. It wasn't much, but it was something. Jack downloaded everything he could find about Council procedures to his personal device. He needed help. He couldn't go to the ambassador. The man barely knew Jack existed. And if the senior staff found out he had accessed classified communications, he would be sent back to Earth immediately. He needed a team. People he could trust. People with skills that could help him navigate this impossible situation. Jack pulled up the embassy personnel files. Dr. Olivia Martinez was an exobiologist studying alien physiology. She understood the different species on the Council better than anyone. Commander Paul Williams served as security chief, a former Navy SEAL with tactical experience. And Ellie Daniels was a linguistic genius who had quickly mastered several alien languages. None of them outranked him. None of them would report him immediately. They were his best hope. Jack sent them all the same message. Emergency meeting. My quarters. 600 hours. Earth's future depends on it. Tell no one. Then he sat back and looked out at the glittering expanse of the hub. Somewhere out there, beings of unimaginable power and intelligence had decided that humans didn't deserve a place among the stars. Jack had 30 days to change their minds. Jack paced nervously in his small quarters. The room was barely big enough for one person, let alone the team he had summoned. Star charts and cultural briefings covered the walls. A small bed sat in one corner, still unmade from his restless night. The door chimed at exactly 600 hours. Dr. Olivia Martinez entered first. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the blue uniform of the science division. She looked tired but alert. "This better be good, Harper," she said, taking in the state of his room with raised eyebrows. Commander Paul Williams arrived next. Tall and broad-shouldered, the security chief had to duck slightly to enter the room. His expression was serious, his eyes quickly scanning the small space for threats out of habit. "What's the emergency?" Paul asked, his voice low and calm. Ellie Daniels was the last to arrive. The young linguist looked like she hadn't slept at all. Probably up all night studying some new alien dialect, Jack thought. Her talent for languages had made her famous back on Earth, even before she was assigned to the embassy. "Why all the secrecy?" Ellie asked, pushing her glasses up on her nose. Jack took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming. What I'm about to tell you is classified. If anyone finds out I accessed this information, I'll be on the first ship back to Earth." He activated his personal device and projected the Council's message onto the wall. "Yesterday, I intercepted this transmission by accident. The Galaxy Council has been evaluating humanity since first contact. Their final assessment will be presented in 30 days. The three guests read in silence. Paul's face hardened. Olivia's hand went to her mouth. Ellie just stared, her eyes moving quickly across the alien text. "Are you sure this translation is accurate?" Ellie asked, stepping closer to the projection. "As sure as I can be," Jack replied. "But you're the language expert." Ellie studied the text, making small adjustments to the translation. When she finished, she looked even more worried. "It's accurate. They think we're a mistake, an evolutionary dead end. They're going to vote on correction measures." "Which means what exactly?" Paul asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "Best case. They cut Earth off from all galactic contact," Jack said. "Worst case. I don't know. But I've heard rumors about planets that disappeared from star charts after council judgments." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation sank in. "Why are you telling us?" Olivia finally asked. "Why not go to the ambassador?" "Because we're new to the galactic community," Jack explained. "The senior staff would follow protocol, which means months of diplomatic talks while the council moves forward with their vote. We don't have time for protocol." Paul nodded slowly. "So what's your plan?" Jack pointed to another document he had projected on the wall. "There's an old provision in the council charter. Any species facing judgment can request a formal challenge to prove their worth." "What kind of challenge?" Ellie asked, already scanning the document. "That's the problem. It doesn't say. No one has invoked this right in thousands of years." Jack looked at each of them in turn. "I need your help. Olivia, you understand the different species better than anyone. Paul, you have tactical experience. Ellie, you can help us navigate their language and customs." "This is crazy," Olivia said, shaking her head. "The four of us against the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy." "They're judging us based on our history," Jack replied, "not our potential." "Then we show them our potential," Paul said firmly. "We show them what humans do best, adapt and overcome." Ellie smiled slightly. "I always wanted to make history. Saving our species from galactic judgment seems like a good way to do it." "So you're in?" Jack asked, hardly daring to hope. They looked at each other, then back at Jack. "We're in," they said together. For 3 days, Jack and his team worked in secret. They turned Jack's small quarters into their base of operations. Olivia brought food from the embassy cafeteria. Paul secured the room against electronic surveillance. Ellie spent hours translating ancient council documents. "We need allies," Jack said on the morning of the 4th day. He pointed to a star map showing the different council races. "We can't do this alone." Olivia nodded in agreement. "The senior council races won't help us. They've already made up their minds. But what about the junior members?" She pointed to 2 stars on the map. "The Nelvarians and the Diraxians. Both were admitted to the council relatively recently. Both have had positive interactions with humans." "The Nelvarians are empaths," Ellie added. "They can sense emotions. When they first met humans, they said our emotional range was fascinating." "And the Diraxians?" Paul asked. "They were wary of us at first," Jack replied. But after we shared our music and art with them, their attitude changed. They requested copies of Earth's greatest artistic works. The team decided to arrange a meeting with representatives from both races. This was risky. If the senior council members found out, they might speed up their vote. But Jack knew they needed help from someone who understood council politics better than they did. Finding a neutral location for the meeting was difficult. They couldn't meet at the embassy without raising suspicion. Finally, Paul suggested a trading station at the edge of the hub. Many species went there to exchange goods and information. 4 more humans wouldn't attract much attention. 2 days later, they made their way to the trading station separately, using different routes to avoid being tracked. The station was crowded with beings from dozens of worlds. The air smelled of strange foods and exotic spices. Sounds of alien languages filled the space. They met in a small private room that Paul had arranged through unofficial channels. The Nelvarian representative arrived first. Thrill was tall and thin, with translucent skin that pulsed with blue light. As an empath, Thrill could sense the human's anxiety immediately. "Your emotions are very strong today," Thrill said, speaking through a translator device. "Something troubles you greatly." The Diraxian arrived a few minutes later. Krith was an imposing figure, towering over even Paul. The insectoid alien had 4 arms and a hard exoskeleton that gleamed under the room's lights. Its large compound eyes studied the humans carefully. "This meeting is unusual," Krith said, mandibles clicking. "What do humans want from us?" Jack took a deep breath and explained their situation. He showed them the intercepted message and the ancient provision for a challenge. "The Council's assessment process is ancient and rarely challenged," Thrill said when Jack finished. The Nelvarian's skin had darkened with concern, "but it is not infallible. We faced similar judgment cycles ago," Krith added, surprising the humans. "Your species is young, impulsive, but there is something unique in your approach to problems. Will you help us?" Jack asked directly. The 2 aliens looked at each other, communicating in some way the humans couldn't understand. "We will advocate for you," Krith finally said. "But you must provide us with compelling evidence of humanity's value." "What kind of evidence?" Olivia asked. "The challenge will have 3 trials," Thrill explained. "Tests of wisdom, compassion, and innovation. No one knows exactly what these trials will be. They are different for each species. The important thing to remember," Krith said, "is that the Council is not testing what you know. They are testing who you are." Jack nodded slowly, understanding. "They want to see if humanity deserves to exist." "Yes," Thrill said simply, "and you have very little time to prepare." As they left the meeting, Ellie looked worried. 3 trials against the most advanced beings in the galaxy. How can we possibly prepare for that? "We can't," Jack admitted. "We can only be ourselves and hope that's enough." "It will have to be," Paul said firmly, "because we're all Earth has right now." Jack stood before the Galaxy Council, trying not to show his fear. The council chamber was enormous, with seats rising in a great circle around a central platform, where Jack now stood. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy watched him. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Jack couldn't even guess which parts of them were faces. Olivia, Paul, and Ellie sat in a small section reserved for the human delegation. They had helped Jack prepare for this moment, but he had to speak alone. Only the official representative could issue the challenge. At the highest point of the chamber sat the 7 elder races. These were the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. In the center was Zig-Star, the crystalline being who would present the final assessment of humanity. The crystal elder glowed with inner light as it regarded Jack. "Human Jack Harper," Zig-Star said, its voice somehow inside Jack's head rather than in the air. "You are not authorized to address this council. Only your ambassador may speak here." Jack swallowed hard. "With respect, Elder, I invoke the right of species challenge under the ancient provision." A murmur went through the chamber. Many of the delegates looked confused. Some leaned to their neighbors, asking questions. The elder races, however, showed no surprise. They simply waited in silence. The right of challenge has not been invoked in 10,000 years, Sixtar finally said. How does a junior diplomat from a newly contacted world know of this provision? We humans are curious, Jack said simply. We like to read the fine print. A sound like crystal bells rang through the chamber. It took Jack a moment to realize that Sixtar was laughing. Indeed, the elder said, curiosity is one of your species' notable traits, as is your tendency to look for loopholes. The 7 elders conferred among themselves, speaking in ways Jack couldn't hear or understand. Finally, Sixtar turned back to him. The right of challenge is granted, the elder announced. But understand this, human. The trials will be more difficult than any your species has faced. Failure in any trial will result in immediate implementation of correction measures. Jack nodded, trying to look more confident than he felt. We accept these terms. Very well. The first trial will begin immediately. You and your chosen team will be transported to a neutral location. You have 48 hours to complete the first challenge. The central platform where Jack stood began to glow. He felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. Wait, he said quickly. What is the first challenge? You will resolve the territorial dispute between the HFY and the Juxon Collective, Sixtar explained. A conflict that has brought them to the brink of war for 300 years. Jack's eyes widened. He knew about this dispute from his diplomatic studies. No one had been able to solve it. The 2 species were deadlocked in their claims to a resource-rich asteroid field. Before he could say anything more, the tingling sensation increased. The council chamber faded around him. For a moment, Jack existed everywhere and nowhere. His body turned to pure energy. Then he was somewhere else, along with Olivia, Paul, and Ellie. They stood in a plain white room with a large table and several data terminals. On the table was a 3-dimensional map of the disputed asteroid field. 48 hours to solve a 300-year-old conflict. Ellie said, looking at the map. No pressure. They're setting us up to fail, Paul added grimly. Olivia was already examining the data on one of the terminals. Maybe. But they don't know humans very well if they think impossible odds will stop us. Jack smiled for the first time in days. Exactly. The Council thinks humanity is a mistake. Let's prove them wrong, starting now. They gathered around the table, studying the map of the asteroid field where their first trial would take place. The fate of Earth depended on what they did in the next 48 hours. The white room was silent except for the soft beep of the data terminals. Jack and his team had been working for 36 hours straight. They had only 12 hours left to solve the territorial dispute between the HFY and the Juxon Collective. Olivia rubbed her tired eyes. I've analyzed all the resources in the axiom belt, she said, pointing to the 3D map of the asteroid field. The HFY need the gas clouds for their breathing technology. The Juxon need the minerals for their ship construction. Paul walked around the table, studying the map from different angles. Both species have valid historical claims, he said. The HFY discovered the belt first, but the Juxon were the first to actually use it. Ellie sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by cultural data about both species. Their negotiation styles are completely different, she explained. The HFY make decisions as a group and need time to build consensus. The Juxon have a strict hierarchy, and their leaders make quick decisions. Jack felt a growing sense of despair. How could they solve in 2 days what the galaxy's best diplomats couldn't solve in 300 years? He stared at the map, watching the slow rotation of the asteroids. Then something caught his eye. Wait a minute, he said. Olivia, you said the HFY need the gases and the Juxon need the minerals. Yes, Olivia confirmed. The HFY use the rare gases to create breathable atmospheres on their ships and colonies. The Juxon use the minerals to build their living ships. But they're fighting over the same territory, Jack said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. What if they don't have to? The others looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Paul asked. Jack pointed to the map. "Look at the belt from the HFY perspective. They need the gases, which float between the asteroids. Now look at it from the Juxon perspective. They need the solid asteroids themselves." Olivia's eyes widened as she understood. They're not actually competing for the same resources. "Exactly," Jack said, excitement growing in his voice. "What if, instead of dividing the territory, we proposed a cooperative mining agreement? The HFY could extract the gases they need while the Juxon mine the asteroids." Ellie jumped up from the floor. "That could work. The HFY cultural records show they value cooperation, and the Juxon value efficiency above all else." Paul looked skeptical. "But these species have been enemies for centuries. Would they agree to work together?" "They don't have to like each other," Jack explained. "They just have to see the practical benefits." The team spent the next 10 hours creating a detailed proposal. Olivia calculated that cooperative mining would increase yields for both species by 60%. Paul designed security protocols to keep the peace. Ellie crafted the diplomatic language, carefully respecting both cultures. When their time was up, representatives from both the HFY and the Juxon Collective were brought into the room. The HFY were small blue beings who floated slightly above the ground. The Juxon were tall and angular, with reflective skin that looked like polished metal. Jack presented their solution, trying to keep his voice steady despite his exhaustion. When he finished, the room was silent. The HFY representatives huddled together, their bodies touching as they communicated. The Juxon leader stood perfectly still, thinking. Finally, the Juxon leader spoke. "Your solution is unexpected. We had not considered that we desire different elements of the belt." The HFY spokesperson floated forward. "Our consensus is that this proposal has merit. We would accept a pilot program in one section of the belt." Jack could hardly believe what he was hearing. They had actually agreed. A moment later, the white room dissolved around them. Jack and his team found themselves back in the council chamber. The elder races looked down at them, their expressions unreadable. "The first trial is complete," Zixtar announced. "Against all expectations, you have succeeded." A murmur of surprise ran through the chamber. Jack exchanged relieved glances with his team. They had passed the first test. But 2 more trials awaited them, and Jack knew they would only get harder. Jack and his team had only 1 day to rest before the second trial began. They were given a small room with sleeping pods and simple food. Despite their exhaustion, none of them slept well. The weight of Earth's future pressed down on them. "The second trial will test your compassion," Zixtar had told them before they were dismissed. "Prepare yourselves." The next morning, they were once again transported from the council chamber. This time, they found themselves on an observation deck overlooking a planet. The world below them was blue and green like Earth, but with strange purple patterns across its surface. A holographic display appeared, showing information about the planet. Jack read it aloud to the others. Planet Lyria. Population, approximately 3 billion. Technology level, pre-spaceflight. Primary species, Lyrians, mammalian bipeds. The display showed images of the inhabitants. They looked somewhat like humans, but with blue skin and large eyes that wrapped partially around their heads, giving them a wider field of vision. More information scrolled across the display. Planetary crisis. Lyria's sun is entering an expansion phase. Surface temperatures rising. Estimated time until the planet becomes uninhabitable. 20 years. Estimated time until the Lyrians develop space travel independently. 100 years. "This is our test of compassion," Olivia said quietly. 3 billion people are going to die unless they get help. "But they don't have space travel," Paul pointed out. "According to galactic law, contact with pre-spaceflight civilizations is forbidden." "The Council has been debating intervention for decades," a new voice said. They turned to see a council representative standing in the doorway. The being was tall and slender, with features that shifted like smoke. "This is your trial. the representative continued. The Council has been unable to reach a decision. Some believe we must respect the non-interference directive. Others believe compassion demands action. What will humanity do? The representative vanished, leaving them alone with the problem. We can't just let 3 billion people die, Ellie said immediately. But if we break the non-interference directive, we fail the trial, Paul argued. The Council might be testing our ability to follow difficult rules. Jack stared at the beautiful planet below. This isn't about rules, he said finally. It's about compassion. The question is, can we help them without interfering with their natural development? They spent hours studying the Lyrian civilization. The people were peaceful, with a unified global government. Their technology was roughly equivalent to Earth's early 21st century. They had detected the changes in their sun and understood what was happening, but had no means to escape. What if we help them indirectly? Olivia suggested, something that appears natural to them. Jack thought about this. Like what? Their sun is heating up, Olivia explained. What if we created a cooling effect in their atmosphere? Something that would buy them time to develop space travel on their own. Ellie was already working on one of the terminals. We could redirect comets from the outer system, she said. Ice comets hitting the upper atmosphere would create a cooling haze. It would look like a natural phenomenon to the Lyrians. Paul nodded slowly. That could work. It wouldn't violate the non-interference directive, because we wouldn't be making contact, and it would give them the time they need to save themselves. The team worked through the night, calculating comet trajectories and atmospheric effects. When morning came, they presented their plan to the Council representative. This is your solution, the representative asked, studying their proposal. You would save them without revealing yourselves. Yes, Jack said firmly. True compassion means helping others without expecting recognition or thanks. The Lyrians need time, not a technological shortcut. This gives them the chance to fulfill their own potential. The representative was silent for a long moment. An unexpected approach, it said finally. The Council will consider your solution. Once again, the world around them dissolved, and they found themselves back in the Council chamber. The elder races were conferring among themselves, their communication incomprehensible to human senses. Finally, Zix-Tar spoke. The second trial is complete. Your solution was elegant. You have shown compassion without condescension. 2 trials passed. 1 remains. Jack felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by dread. He knew the final trial would be the hardest of all. The final trial began immediately. There was no rest period this time, no chance to recover. Jack and his team were transported to a small round room with a single large table in the center. On the table was a strange device. It looked like a cube made of flowing light, constantly changing colors and patterns. Next to the cube was a data pad with symbols that none of them recognized. Welcome to the final trial, a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. The test of innovation. Zix-Tar appeared in the room, though Jack could tell it was only a projection. The crystalline elder glowed softly as it regarded them. Before you is a mathematical problem that has stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for over 10,000 years, Zix-Tar explained. It relates to transdimensional travel, moving between realities. Solve it, and you pass the final trial. The elder's projection vanished, leaving them alone with the impossible problem. This is just cruel, Ellie said, looking at the strange symbols on the datapad. They know we can't solve this. Our best mathematicians would need years just to understand the basics. Paul examined the cube without touching it. It's not just a display, he said. I think it's a model of the mathematical problem. See how the patterns keep shifting. It's showing different dimensional states. Olivia was already working on one of the room's terminals, trying to find reference materials that might help them. There's nothing in the database about this problem. It's like they've deliberately removed all information. Jack felt a cold knot of fear in his stomach. After coming so far, after passing 2 impossible trials, they were going to fail at the final hurdle. Earth's fate would be sealed. Hours passed as they struggled with the problem. They took turns studying the cube and the datapad, looking for any pattern or clue they could find. Nothing worked. The symbols remained meaningless. The cube continued its endless color shifts. After nearly a day of fruitless effort, they were exhausted. Ellie sat on the floor, humming softly to herself, a habit she had when thinking deeply. Jack paced around the room, trying to clear his head. Suddenly he stopped. "Wait," he said. "What if we're thinking about this all wrong?" The others looked at him, too tired to show much hope. "What do you mean?" Olivia asked. "What if it's not a math problem?" Jack said slowly. "What if it's a language problem?" He turned to Ellie. "You're our language expert. What if these symbols aren't equations, but a form of communication?" Ellie blinked, then jumped to her feet. That could be possible. Many advanced civilizations don't separate mathematics from language the way humans do. With new energy, they attack the problem from a different angle. Ellie treated the symbols as a language to be decoded rather than equations to be solved. Paul, who had been quietly building physical models with materials in the room, had another insight. "We need to think in 3 dimensions, not 2, he said, showing them a structure he had created. "Look at how the patterns connect when you view them from different angles." Olivia, who had been staring at the flowing cube for hours, suddenly gasped. "The pattern. It reminds me of DNA, the way information is encoded in a spiral. It's recursive." The solution is within the problem itself, Jack realized. They worked together with renewed purpose, each contributing their unique perspective. They weren't trying to solve the equation the way the council expected. Instead, they were reinterpreting the entire problem. When Zixter returned, they were ready. "Have you solved the problem?" the elder asked. "Not exactly," Jack admitted. "We can't solve it as a traditional mathematical equation. No one can. That's why it's remained unsolved for 10,000 years." "Then you have failed the trial," Zixter stated. "No," Jack said firmly. "We haven't solved it, but we've reframed it. The problem isn't unsolvable. It's just been approached with the wrong framework." He gestured to their work. "It's not a math problem. It's a communication problem. The solution isn't an answer. It's a conversation between dimensions." Zixter was silent for a long moment, studying their work. The crystalline being glowed brighter, then dimmer, then bright again. "Interesting," it said finally. "Most unexpected." For 3 long days, Jack and his team waited. After their final trial, they had been returned to a holding room, with no information about whether they had passed or failed. The uncertainty was worse than any challenge they had faced. "What do you think is happening?" Ellie asked, pacing the small room. "The council is deliberating," Jack replied, though he was just guessing. "Our approach to the problem was unexpected. They probably don't know what to make of it." Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The great circular room was more crowded than before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, far more than had attended previous sessions. Jack and his team stood on the central platform, facing the 7 elder races. The chamber fell silent as Zixter rose to speak. "In our long history," the crystalline being began, "few species have surprised us as humanity has. You did not approach our challenges as we expected." Another elder, a being made of what looked like living smoke, spoke next. "Where we sought compromise, you found synergy. Where we saw interference, you created opportunity. Where we accepted impossibility, you reimagined the question." Murmurs spread through the chamber as the delegates discussed these words. Jack held his breath, not daring to hope. "We have observed your history," Zixter continued. "Your violence, your divisions, your struggles. But we fail to recognize that these very challenges have forged in humans a remarkable adaptability and creative problem-solving approach that our more stable civilizations have lost." Jack couldn't believe what he was hearing. It sounded almost like praise. The Council has reached a decision, Six-Tar announced. Humanity is not a mistake. You are an unexpected variation. Your species will remain under observation, but you will be granted full developmental autonomy and increased access to Council archives. Relief flooded through Jack. They had done it. Earth was safe. There is more, another elder said. This one was a being of pure light, so bright it was difficult to look at directly. Several Council races have expressed interest in establishing deeper relations with Earth. They find your unique perspective valuable. Jack looked at his team. Olivia was smiling so wide it looked like her face might split. Paul stood tall and proud, but Jack could see the relief in his eyes. Ellie was wiping away tears of joy. "Thank you," Jack said to the Council, his voice steady despite his emotions. "We will strive to be worthy of your trust. Do not strive to be what we expect." Six-Tar replied, its crystal form glowing warmly. "That is the lesson we have learned from you. Strive to be uniquely human. That is your value to the galaxy." 6 months later, Jack stood at the window of the newly expanded Earth Embassy. The small, cramped quarters where this adventure had begun were gone, replaced by a large complex that housed hundreds of human diplomats, scientists, and cultural representatives. "We're still on probation, you know," Olivia said, joining him at the window. "The Council's watching our every move." "Good," Jack replied with a smile. "Let them watch. Every day we're proving them wrong." Paul entered with a datapad. "The engineering exchange program is oversubscribed. Turns out everyone wants human perspectives on their unsolvable problems." Ellie, now officially appointed as Earth's chief linguist to the Council, looked up from her work. "The Diraxians are proposing a cultural summit next month. They believe our art forms and theirs might have a common ancestry." Jack nodded, watching the diverse alien ships docking at the station. The Council had thought humanity was a mistake, a chaotic, primitive species unworthy of the galactic community. Instead, they discovered that humanity's greatest strengths were born from its struggles: adaptability, creativity, and an unwavering determination to overcome challenges. The galaxy was about to discover that humans weren't just worthy of inclusion. They were exactly what the galactic community needed to break out of millennia of stagnation. Humanity wasn't a mistake. They were the wild card no one knew they needed. So, Jack asked his team, "What impossible problem should we solve next?"